The rain began before sunrise, soft at first, whispering against the roof like a warning no one understood yet. By noon, the clouds had swallowed the sky whole, and the old family house stood beneath the storm, wrapped in tension so heavy it seemed to press against the walls themselves. Inside her childhood bedroom, Amara stood before a mirror framed with fading gold paint, staring silently at the wedding dress her late mother had sewn years earlier with weakening hands and failing eyesight. The ivory lace shimmered faintly in the dim light. Tiny pearls traced the neckline like frozen tears. Every stitch carried memory. Every fold carried sacrifice. Her fingers trembled as she touched the fabric carefully, almost fearfully, because some part of her felt that once this day ended, nothing in her life would ever feel the same again. Behind her, voices drifted faintly from the courtyard below, where relatives hurried beneath decorated tents, pretending the storm outside was nothing more than harmless weather. But storms rarely announce their true purpose immediately. Sometimes they wait. Sometimes they gather quietly, while people laugh beneath fragile lights, believing themselves safe. "You are thinking too much again." The voice came from the doorway. Amara turned slowly. Selina leaned against the frame with crossed arms, elegant even in stillness. Her dark green satin dress hugged her figure perfectly, and her makeup had been done with such precision that she almost looked unreal, like someone painted carefully onto the scene rather than born into it. She smiled faintly, but the smile never reached her eyes. "Every bride gets nervous," Amara replied softly. Selina stepped into the room. The scent of expensive perfume followed her. "Nervous?" she repeated. "Or guilty?" Amara frowned. "Guilty for what?" Selina shrugged lightly. "For being the sister who always gets everything." The words landed gently, but beneath them was something sharp enough to cut skin. Amara looked away toward the mirror again. She had heard these comments before. For years, in fact. Small remarks wrapped in jokes. Tiny resentments hidden beneath laughter. Selina had perfected the art of speaking bitterness beautifully. "This is not a competition," Amara murmured. Selina laughed quietly. "That is easy for you to say." Outside, thunder rolled across the distant hills. The sound lingered through the room like an omen. Amara inhaled slowly, trying to steady herself. She had spent most of her life calming storms around other people, especially around Selina. Their mother used to say that Amara carried peace inside her the way some women carry jewelry. Naturally, quietly. But peace has a cost. People forget that. They admire the calmness while ignoring the exhaustion hidden beneath it. "You look beautiful," Amara said finally, hoping kindness might soften whatever darkness lingered in her sister's mood. For a brief second, Selina's expression changed. Something vulnerable flickered there. Sadness, perhaps, or loneliness. But it vanished quickly. "Not beautiful enough, apparently," she replied. Before Amara could answer, Selina turned and walked out. The silence she left behind felt colder than before. Downstairs, the wedding guests had nearly all arrived. The courtyard glowed beneath strings of golden lights, while musicians tuned their instruments beneath a white canopy swaying gently in the wind. Children ran laughing between tables filled with steaming dishes and flower arrangements. Elderly women whispered predictions about the marriage while pretending not to gossip. Men discussed weather and politics with loud confidence no one fully believed. To anyone looking from outside, it appeared perfect. A celebration wrapped in tradition and beauty. But perfection often hides fractures invisible until pressure finally exposes them. Near the altar, Elijah stood greeting relatives politely. Tall, calm, composed. He carried himself with the kind of quiet confidence that never demanded attention, yet somehow commanded respect naturally. People trusted him instinctively, perhaps because kindness lived plainly in his actions instead of only in his words. When he noticed Amara descending the staircase, his entire face softened. Not dramatically, not performatively, just honestly, like a man seeing home after years of wandering. Several guests noticed. So did Selina. She stood near the far table, holding a glass of wine too tightly, watching Elijah's expression with unreadable eyes. Their Aunt Rose leaned closer beside her. "You should smile more today," she whispered. Selina forced a small smile immediately. "I am smiling." "Not with your eyes." Selina's jaw tightened slightly. "Maybe my eyes are tired." Rose studied her carefully, but said nothing else. The ceremony began moments later beneath thick grey skies threatening heavier rain. Guests settled into rows of white chairs while soft violin music drifted through the humid afternoon air. Amara walked slowly down the aisle beside her father, her heart pounding so hard she feared everyone could hear it. The wedding dress flowed around her like pale water. Tears filled several guests' eyes. Even hardened old men sitting near the back cleared their throats awkwardly as she passed. And at the altar, Elijah looked at her with such unwavering certainty that for one brief moment, every fear inside her quieted completely. "You look frightened," he whispered gently when she reached him. Amara managed the smallest smile. "I think my heart forgot how to beat normally." Elijah's eyes warmed. "Then let mine carry yours for today." The priest began speaking. Vows followed soon after. Simple words, honest words. Promises not only of love but endurance. Loyalty during sickness. Patience during hardship. Truth during temptation. As Elijah spoke, rain began falling harder above the canopy, drumming steadily overhead like distant applause from heaven itself. Amara's eyes filled with tears during her vows, not because she doubted her future, but because for the first time in years, she felt truly seen, entirely. The crowd erupted warmly after their kiss. Music swelled louder. Applause echoed through the courtyard. Their father cried openly without shame. Even Aunt Rose dabbed at her eyes dramatically while muttering about mascara and emotional damage. But across the courtyard, Selina remained perfectly still, watching, silent, her wine glass untouched now, her expression unreadable. During the reception, the storm worsened. Wind curled through the edges of the tents, while rain lashed against nearby windows. Yet inside, the celebration continued with determined joy. Music pulsed through the courtyard. Couples danced beneath lantern light. Laughter rose and fell in waves. Servers carried trays overflowing with roasted meat, rice, sweet bread, and spiced vegetables. For a while, happiness seemed stronger than whatever darkness had followed the family into that day. Amara even allowed herself to relax. She danced with Elijah slowly while guests clapped along to the music. His hand rested gently against her waist. Safe, steady. "You are finally breathing again," he whispered. "Barely. Still counts." She laughed softly. It was the first genuine laugh she had given all day. But not far away, Selina watched them from beneath the shadows near the staircase. Her eyes lingered on Elijah's hand resting against her sister's back. Then on the wedding dress itself, the ivory lace, the pearls, the attention, everything she believed should have belonged to her instead. Because jealousy does not begin with hatred, it begins with comparison, with the quiet belief that someone else's happiness somehow stole from your own. And Selina had spent years feeding that belief until it grew larger than love itself. Earlier that month, she had stood in front of her bedroom mirror trying on expensive dresses while speaking bitterly to her closest friend, Nadia. "Do you know what the worst part is?" Selina had whispered. "Everyone acts like Amara deserves happiness more than me." Nadia frowned carefully. "Nobody said that. They do not need to say it. You can feel it. Maybe Elijah just fell in love with her." Selina's expression darkened instantly. "Why?" Nadia hesitated. "What do you mean, why? What makes her so special?" The question had not sounded curious. It sounded wounded, deeply wounded. Nadia looked uncomfortable. "Selina, no. Tell me honestly. She is quiet, predictable, careful. Men usually notice women like me first. Maybe he wanted peace instead of attention." Selina never forgot those words. They followed her for weeks afterward like a curse whispered through every room she entered. Peace instead of attention. The memory returned now as she watched Elijah smile softly at Amara during their dance. Her nails pressed harder against the wineglass. Around her, guests laughed and celebrated. But inside Selina, something dangerous had already begun hardening into decision. Upstairs, hidden inside her bedroom closet beneath folded blankets, was a secret she had discovered 2 nights earlier. The spare key to Amara's bridal suite. At first, she told herself she only wanted to look at the wedding dress one final time before the ceremony. Just curiosity. Just harmless envy. But envy rarely stays harmless once fed long enough. Slowly, a thought had taken shape inside her mind. Wild, reckless, humiliating, yet irresistible. What if, just for one moment, she became the bride instead? What if Elijah saw her wearing the dress and realized he had chosen the wrong sister? The idea should have horrified her. Instead, it consumed her. Because desperate people begin mistaking fantasy for destiny. Selina looked again toward the dance floor. Amara rested her head briefly against Elijah's chest while he smiled down at her with unmistakable tenderness. That expression broke something inside Selina completely. Her lips pressed thin, her breathing sharpened, and in that exact moment, beneath the sound of thunder and music and celebration, she made the choice that would destroy the entire night. Quietly, without speaking to anyone, Selina set down her untouched wineglass and disappeared toward the staircase. No one noticed her leave. Not yet. But sometimes disaster begins with something as small as a woman walking silently out of a room, while everyone else is distracted by joy. Upstairs, the hallway stood dark and silent compared to the celebration below. Music pulsed faintly through the ceiling, while rain hammered against the windows with growing violence. Selina moved slowly toward the bridal suite, her heartbeat uneven beneath the tight emerald fabric clinging to her body. Every step felt unreal, dangerous, yet she continued walking anyway. Because there are moments when envy becomes so powerful that shame no longer sounds loud enough to stop it. Her fingers trembled slightly as she unlocked the door with the spare key. The room smelled faintly of roses and perfume. Candles flickered near the vanity mirror. Amara's jewelry rested neatly beside delicate makeup brushes and folded tissues stained with happy tears. For one brief second, Selina hesitated. Something inside her whispered that she should leave immediately. That crossing this line would change everything forever. But then, her eyes landed on the wedding dress hanging near the window. Ivory lace glowing softly in candlelight. Untouched now. Waiting. Selina stared at it with an expression almost mournful. Just once, she whispered to herself. Just once. Carefully, she reached for the fabric. Downstairs, laughter erupted near the dance floor, while Elijah helped Amara cut the wedding cake beneath flickering lanterns. Guests clapped and cheered as frosting smeared lightly across Amara's cheek. Elijah smiled and wiped it away gently with his thumb. The crowd adored them together. That truth had become impossible to ignore now. Aunt Rose leaned toward one of the older women nearby and muttered, "I have never seen Elijah look at anyone the way he looks at Amara." The woman nodded knowingly. Some loves are obvious before the couple even notices them. But not everyone watching the newlyweds felt warmth in their hearts. Near the back tables, several younger guests exchanged uneasy glances. "Have you noticed Selina tonight?" one whispered quietly. "Something feels strange." Another shrugged. "She always acts dramatic." "No, I mean different." The first girl lowered her voice further. "I saw her staring at Elijah during the ceremony like..." She stopped herself. "Like what?" "Like she wanted to be standing there instead." The others laughed awkwardly, dismissing the idea. Yet discomfort lingered in their expressions afterward. Sometimes people sense approaching disaster before they understand why. Upstairs, Selina stood before the mirror wearing the wedding dress. Her breathing became shallow the moment she saw herself fully reflected. The gown fit perfectly. Too perfectly. Ivory lace hugged her figure as though designed specifically for her body. Pearls shimmered against her skin. The veil flowed softly behind her shoulders. For one dangerous moment, she allowed herself to imagine another reality entirely. One where she was the bride downstairs. One where Elijah waited for her beneath the altar. One where the entire village admired her instead of Amara. Tears filled her eyes unexpectedly. Because fantasy can feel painfully beautiful when reality disappoints you long enough. Selina touched the lace sleeve gently. "I could have looked like this," she whispered. But deep inside herself, she already knew the truth. The dress had never been the real thing she wanted. She wanted what the dress represented: devotion, security, genuine love. And those things cannot be stolen simply by wearing someone else's place. Downstairs, Amara finally stepped away from the crowd briefly to fix her shoes and freshen her makeup. "Do not disappear too long," Elijah teased softly as she moved toward the staircase. "People might think I scared away my own wife." Amara smiled. "I will survive 5 minutes upstairs." "Barely." She laughed again. But halfway across the courtyard, she noticed something strange. Selina's wine glass still sat untouched near the staircase. Empty chairs surrounded the table where she had been sitting earlier. "Have you seen my sister?" Amara asked Aunt Rose quietly. Rose frowned slightly. "Not for a while." A small knot tightened inside Amara's stomach. "Maybe she went home early." "Without saying goodbye?" Rose shook her head. "That girl has been carrying something ugly inside her all evening." The comment unsettled Amara more than she wanted to admit. She glanced toward the staircase again, then slowly started walking upstairs. Above her, thunder cracked violently enough to shake the windows. The lights flickered briefly. Rain pounded harder, And somewhere inside the bridal suite, Selina stood, frozen before the mirror, as voices drifted faintly from below. She should have taken off the dress immediately. She knew that now. But something darker had already taken hold of her emotions. A desperate hunger to be seen, to be chosen, to finally stand at the center instead of forever beside it. Then an idea entered her mind. Reckless, cruel, humiliating, yet impossible to resist once imagined. What if she walked downstairs wearing the gown? Just for a moment. Just long enough to see Elijah's reaction. Just long enough to force everyone to look at her instead. Selina's breathing sharpened. Her pulse thundered in her ears louder than the storm outside. She knew it was wrong. Yet wrongness itself almost thrilled her now. Because pain distorts judgment slowly until destruction starts feeling justified. Downstairs, musicians began another song, while guests gathered near the dance floor once more. Elijah looked toward the staircase absent-mindedly, searching for Amara in the crowd. Instead, he saw her father approaching, with concern written across his tired face. "Have you seen Amara?" the older man asked. Elijah shook his head. "She went upstairs a few minutes ago." Before either man could speak again, the music stopped abruptly. One violinist lowered his bow mid-note. Conversations faded slowly into silence. Heads turned instinctively toward the staircase. Elijah followed their gaze, and his entire expression changed instantly. At the top of the staircase stood Selina, wearing the wedding dress. Gasps rippled through the courtyard like shockwaves. Several guests covered their mouths in disbelief. Others stared openly, unable to process what they were seeing. The storm outside roared louder, almost as though nature itself recoiled from the scene unfolding beneath the lantern lights. Selina descended slowly, one hand brushing the railing gracefully, while the veil drifted behind her shoulders. Her face remained calm, too calm, yet her eyes burned with something unstable beneath the surface. Elijah stood frozen, not with temptation, with horror. Halfway down the stairs, Selina stopped and looked directly at him. "Do I really look so wrong in it?" she asked softly. Nobody answered. The silence itself became unbearable. Then Amara appeared at the top of the staircase behind her sister. The moment she saw the dress, all color drained from her face completely. Her hand gripped the wall beside her, as if the room itself had tilted suddenly beneath her feet. "Selina," the whisper barely escaped her lips. Guests looked between the sisters with widening discomfort. Aunt Rose muttered a prayer beneath her breath. Their father looked physically ill. But Selina continued descending calmly, as though nothing about the moment was abnormal. When she finally reached the bottom step, she turned slowly toward the crowd. "Why is everyone staring?" she asked with a faint smile. "It is only a dress." "Take it off." Aunt Rose's voice cracked sharply through the silence. Selina ignored her completely. Instead, she looked only at Elijah. "Tell me honestly," she said softly. "If you had met me first, would today be different?" The question struck the courtyard like lightning. Amara's breath caught painfully. Elijah stared at Selina in stunned disbelief. "What are you doing?" he asked quietly. Selina stepped closer. "Answer me." Rain battered the roof violently overhead. Guests shifted uncomfortably, desperate to disappear yet unable to look away. The musicians stood frozen near their instruments. Even the children sensed something terrible unfolding and fell silent instinctively. Elijah's jaw tightened. "This is not the time." Selina laughed softly, though tears already shimmered dangerously in her eyes. "No, this is exactly the time. She gestured toward herself. "Look at me." He did, briefly. Then his expression hardened further. "Take off the dress, Selina." The softness in his voice was gone now, replaced by disappointment so visible it cut deeper than anger ever could. Selina's composure flickered. "Why?" she demanded quietly. "Because it belongs to your sister." "Maybe it should not." The courtyard erupted with shocked murmurs. Amara felt humiliation burn through her entire body. Her wedding day, her mother's dress, her own sister standing beneath lantern lights, trying to turn love into competition before an entire village. She wanted to scream. Instead, she stood frozen. Elijah looked toward Amara, then back at Selina slowly. "You need to stop this." But Selina stepped even closer to him. Close enough now that guests began exchanging horrified glances openly. "Just tell me the truth," she whispered. "Have you really never imagined me standing beside you instead?" Elijah stared at her for several long seconds. Then something inside his expression changed completely. Not confusion, not temptation. Clarity. Painful clarity. "No," he answered quietly. The word struck Selina harder than if he had shouted it. Her face stiffened instantly. "You are lying." "I am not." "You chose her because she is safe." Elijah shook his head slowly. "I chose her because she is honest." Silence crashed through the courtyard again. Selina's eyes filled rapidly now, but pride still held her upright. "And what am I?" she asked bitterly. Elijah's voice remained calm. "Someone who is deeply unhappy." Those words cut deeper than cruelty, because truth wounds most when it exposes what someone desperately tries hiding from themselves. Selina laughed shakily, though tears slipped freely down her cheeks now. "You think you know me?" "No," Elijah answered softly. "I think you do not know yourself anymore." Amara closed her eyes briefly as emotion overwhelmed her chest. This was no longer humiliation alone. It was tragedy. A family unraveling publicly beneath storm clouds and candlelight, while strangers watched in silence. Selina suddenly reached for Elijah's hand. Gasps spread immediately through the crowd. "Then dance with me," she whispered desperately. "Just once." Elijah looked down at her hand, then slowly stepped backward instead of taking it. The movement was small, gentle even, yet it shattered whatever fragile illusions Selina still clung to. Her face collapsed completely. "You would reject me in front of everyone?" she whispered. Elijah's eyes darkened with sorrow. "You rejected yourself the moment you walked downstairs wearing that dress." Tears streamed openly down Selina's face now. Around them, guests looked away awkwardly, unable to bear witnessing such naked humiliation any longer. But Selina remained standing there, trembling beneath ivory lace and shattered pride, while thunder rolled violently overhead, like judgment echoing through the night. For one endless moment, nobody moved. The storm roared above the courtyard, while Selina stood in the center of the shattered celebration, wearing the stolen wedding dress like armor that had suddenly become too heavy to carry. Her breathing trembled, mascara streaked slowly down her cheeks. Around her, guests shifted awkwardly beneath the lantern lights, avoiding direct eye contact, the way people do when witnessing someone's deepest humiliation exposed in public. But the cruelest pain was not the silence surrounding her. It was the fact that Elijah still had not touched her hand. Not once. Selina looked down slowly at her trembling fingers before raising her eyes toward him again. "You embarrassed me," she whispered brokenly. Elijah's expression softened slightly, but not with love, with pity. "No," he answered quietly. "You embarrassed yourself." The words struck harder than thunder. Selina inhaled sharply as if the air itself had turned against her. Then suddenly she turned toward Amara. "Say something," she cried. "Stop standing there looking at me like I am some monster." Amara's lips parted, but no words came immediately. Tears burned behind her eyes, while humiliation and grief twisted painfully together inside her chest. This was her wedding day. The day meant to celebrate love and family and hope. Instead, her own sister had transformed it into spectacle. Betrayal always hurts deeper when it comes from someone whose pain you once tried carrying as your own. Slowly, Amara stepped forward. The crowd watched in absolute silence now. Even the rain seemed quieter somehow. "Why?" she asked softly. Selina laughed bitterly through tears. "You really still do not understand. Then make me understand." Selina's face twisted with years of buried resentment, finally clawing toward the surface. "Because I spent my entire life standing beside you while everyone looked through me." Amara shook her head faintly. "That is not true." "It is!" Selina's voice cracked loudly enough to echo through the courtyard. "You were always the good daughter, the responsible one, the one mother trusted, the one people respected. And now even the man I—" She stopped suddenly, but too late. The silence afterward became suffocating. Elijah's eyes narrowed slightly. Amara stared at her sister in disbelief. "You what?" Selina closed her eyes tightly as tears spilled faster down her face. "I loved him first." Gasps spread immediately through the guests. Aunt Rose covered her mouth. Their father looked physically shaken. But Elijah's expression changed to something colder now. "No," he said quietly. Selina looked at him sharply. "Do not tell me what I felt." "You did not love me," Elijah replied calmly. "You wanted to win." Those words shattered the final fragile thread holding Selina together. "You think everything about me is selfish," she screamed, "because tonight proved it." The accusation landed brutally. Selina staggered back slightly as though struck. Then suddenly, without warning, she ripped the veil from her head and threw it onto the wet floor. "Fine," she cried. "Fine. Maybe I wanted attention. Maybe I wanted someone to choose me for once." Her voice broke completely then. Raw, desperate, human. "Do you know what it feels like?" she whispered shakily. "To spend years watching everyone love your sister more." Amara's eyes filled instantly. "I never wanted you to feel unloved. That did not stop it from happening." Their father finally stepped forward then, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Enough." The single word silenced everyone. He looked at Selina with heartbreaking disappointment. "Your mother spent her final months begging this family not to destroy itself after she was gone." Selina lowered her head immediately. Shame flooded her expression. "And tonight," he continued quietly, "you nearly succeeded in doing exactly that." Tears fell silently from Selina's face onto the ivory lace covering her hands. No anger remained in her now, only collapse.
Emotional collapse so complete it hollowed out every trace of arrogance she carried downstairs earlier that evening. For a long moment, nobody spoke.
Then Selina whispered the words, barely loud enough to hear. I do not know why I became this way. The honesty in her voice changed something inside the atmosphere instantly. Because beneath the jealousy, beneath the humiliation, stood a woman finally confronting the emptiness she had spent years hiding behind beauty and attention. Amara stared at her sister silently. Memories flooded through her mind all at once. Selina laughing as a child beneath summer rain. Selina crying at their mother's funeral while pretending to be strong. Selina acting reckless after the grief became too heavy to carry properly. There had always been pain beneath her behavior. Pain no one addressed honestly because the family became too busy surviving loss itself. And pain ignored long enough often transforms into destruction. Slowly, Amara bent down and picked up the discarded veil from the wet floor. The delicate fabric trembled slightly in her hands. Selina looked at her with swollen eyes filled with disbelief. After everything I just did, she whispered shakily, you are still looking at me with kindness. Amara swallowed hard. No, she answered softly. I am looking at you with heartbreak. That hurt Selina more than hatred ever could. Her shoulders collapsed completely then. A sob escaped her lips before she could stop it. She covered her face instantly, humiliated beyond words. Around them, guests lowered their eyes respectfully now. The spectacle had ended. What remained was simply sorrow. Elijah walked quietly toward Amara and stood beside her. Not possessively, protectively. His presence felt steady amidst the emotional wreckage surrounding them. Selina noticed immediately. Even now, after everything, he still chose Amara without hesitation. Not because she was prettier, not because she was quieter, but because peace lived naturally inside her character. And for the first time, Selina understood the difference between being desired and being trusted. One fades quickly, the other survives storms. Their father inhaled slowly before speaking again. Go upstairs, he told Selina quietly. Take off the dress. Selina nodded weakly. She did not argue this time. She did not defend herself. She simply turned and began climbing the staircase slowly, while the entire courtyard watched in silence. The ivory gown no longer looked elegant now. It looked tragic, heavy with consequences she had not fully imagined until this moment. Halfway up the stairs, Selina paused briefly without turning around. Amara. Her sister looked up silently. Selina's voice trembled. I am sorry. Then she disappeared upstairs. The rain softened gradually after that. Guests began leaving quietly one by one, murmuring awkward goodbyes beneath umbrellas and lantern light. The celebration was over, not officially, but emotionally. Music never resumed. Laughter never returned. Some wounds arrived too suddenly for joy to survive beside them. Hours later, the family house stood almost silent, except for distant thunder fading toward the hills. Empty dishes covered the tables downstairs, while candle flames flickered weakly in the humid night air. Amara sat alone near the darkened courtyard, staring at rainwater sliding slowly across the stone floor. Her wedding dress felt heavier now, somehow. Elijah approached carefully, carrying 2 cups of tea. He handed her one without speaking. For several moments, neither said anything. Then quietly, Amara whispered, "Do you think she meant any of it?" Elijah looked toward the staircase thoughtfully. The jealousy? The apology? He exhaled slowly. Both. Tears gathered in Amara's eyes again. "I keep thinking maybe I failed her somehow." Elijah shook his head gently. "Some people drown slowly long before anyone notices they are struggling." She lowered her gaze. "She is still my sister." "I know." His voice softened further. "And that is why this hurts so much." Upstairs, Selina sat alone on the floor beside her bed, still wearing part of the wedding dress. The veil lay folded beside her now. Makeup stained her face. Her reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar, smaller somehow, broken open. For the first time in years, there was no audience around her, no admiration, no attention, only silence. And inside that silence, truth finally spoke clearly enough for her to hear it. She had spent years believing everyone else stole happiness from her. But tonight revealed something terrifying. She had been destroying her own happiness all along. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Selina looked up slowly as Amara entered the room. Neither sister spoke immediately. Rain tapped quietly against the windows while the house settled into exhausted stillness around them. Selina wiped at her swollen eyes quickly. "You should hate me," she whispered. Amara looked at her for a very long time before answering. "Part of me wants to." Selina lowered her head. "I would deserve it." Amara stepped closer carefully. "But hate destroys people. I have already watched it destroy too much inside this family." Tears slipped silently down Selina's face again. "I did not plan for it to go that far." "Then why did you walk downstairs?" Selina stared at the floor. "Because for one moment," her voice cracked weakly, "I wanted to feel chosen." The confession hung painfully between them. Amara closed her eyes briefly. Then slowly, she sat beside her sister on the floor. "Mother used to tell me something after you got into trouble as a child," she said softly. Selina looked up uncertainly. "She said pain can make people selfish when they stop believing they are worthy of love." Selina's face crumpled instantly. Did she really say that? All the time? Silence filled the room again. Then quietly, almost fearfully, Selina asked, "Do you think she would be ashamed of me tonight?" Amara looked toward the rain-covered window for several seconds before answering. "No." Selina frowned slightly. "No? I think she would be heartbroken for you." The difference shattered something inside Selina completely. She began sobbing openly then, years of buried insecurity and bitterness finally collapsing beneath the unbearable weight of grace she did not deserve. Amara held her quietly while the storm outside weakened at last. And somewhere beneath the grief, beneath the humiliation, beneath the wreckage of that terrible night, the first fragile piece of healing finally began. By morning, the entire village knew what had happened. Gossip spread through market stalls and crowded streets faster than sunlight itself. Some people mocked Selina cruelly. Others pitied her. But the story that remained longest in everyone's memory was not the stolen dress. It was the moment the groom refused to hold her hand. Because in that single moment, truth revealed itself completely. Character revealed itself completely. One sister sought attention. The other carried dignity through humiliation. And the man between them chose integrity over temptation while an entire crowd watched. Months later, people would still whisper about the wedding beneath the storm. The sister in ivory lace, the shattered reception, the public rejection. But those who paid closest attention noticed something else too. Selena slowly changed afterward. Quietly, without demanding praise for it. She apologized sincerely to relatives she had hurt. She stopped chasing attention everywhere she went. She began helping others without needing recognition in return. Real transformation rarely arrives dramatically. It begins in humiliation, in silence, in finally seeing yourself clearly after spending years blaming the world for wounds you never healed properly. And Amara never forgot that night either. Not because of the scandal, but because it taught her something painful about love itself. Real love is not loud temptation or stolen attention beneath glowing lights. Real love is the hand that remains steady beside you while storms expose everyone's true nature. So, if there is one thing to remember from this story, let it be this. Jealousy can wear beauty like a mask for years. It can smile softly, speak sweetly, stand beside you pretending to celebrate your happiness while secretly resenting every piece of it. But eventually, truth reveals itself. It always does. And when that moment comes, character matters more than charm ever will. Because beauty may capture attention for a moment, but integrity is what determines whose hand people choose to hold when everything begins falling apart.